Let's talk now to Peter Kirkham, former Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I suppose the first question I would ask is obviously everyone's very pleased that the predicted trouble that was going to happen last night didn't happen. But the question, I suppose, has to be, does that mean that the police got it right, or does that mean the police got it wrong?
The police got it right based on the information that they had, I think.
Right.
They were dealing with intelligence gathered over a very short period of time. They know that might be inaccurate, but they assess it as best they can, and they're going to take a belt and braces approach, err on the side of caution, and if there are grounds to suspect there might be some problem somewhere, to deploy officers just in case.
And, I mean, obviously it will cost them quite a lot of money to do an operation like that, presumably, and they couldn't do it sustainably and continually. There's word that there might be some more demos and more protests at the weekend. A lot of people saying the weekend is more likely to be a hot spot than the weekday, perhaps, because a lot of people go to work, etc. You know, but they can't continue to rally round like this, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
There's not very many police officers in the country, but there's enough to maintain this sort of thing for some time. But as you say, it couldn't be done indefinitely. It would be too much of a drain on ordinary resources.
Yes. Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. Peter Blexley was in here earlier and said that, you know, it shows that when they want to do something, they can do it, though. So maybe they could apply the same methodology to stopping other things from going so badly wrong, like perhaps knife crime.
Knife crime is not quite the same thing at all. It's much more difficult to get a handle on that. It's different people doing it for different reasons in different places, at different times of day and week and month and year. It's not something that's got any focus at all, usually, and so it's much more difficult to get a handle on. But policing is always it's always the case that if you put resources into something, then you will get more results than if you don't.
Yes, indeed. And as far as the way that the police have been reacting to all of this, obviously they've suffered some injuries which nobody wants to see. Do you think that there's a chance that this sort of protesting has petered out to some extent? What do you think?
I wouldn't like to say. I suspect not. I suspect there'll be more of it yet. But who knows? It entirely depends on the mindset of the protesters and whether they decide to keep pursuing it or whether they move on to some other subject or some other interest rather than these protests.
Yeah, and I mean,
if in their hands, really.
If the police are advising government, if they can, what will they be telling government? Because in the end, most of these things have to be kind of solved politically, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And if there are, it seems to be quite difficult to get a handle on what the protesters actually want. There's mention of two-tier policing, but there is no two-tier policing as a model that the police use. Yes, there may well be differences between how different things in different places at different times are policed, because they're policed by different officers and usually different forces, or quite often different forces. And so there'll be very different approaches across a range of different protests. And so there is no model of two-tier policing.
Well, we saw the West Midlands Police. We saw the West Midlands Police yesterday saying that they had meetings with community leaders in Birmingham when they thought there might be some trouble in a Muslim area, and a lot of people would say to you, well, that's all very well, and maybe that was the right thing to do, even though they've now admitted it might not have been. But they don't really do that in lots of other situations. They don't consult communities before they send the police in.
They do if it's feasible, if they've got the time to do it, and if there's an identifiable community and community leaders to consult. They do it across the piece.
Well, yeah, but nobody has ever told me that they've been consulted by the police about whether they should be policed.
I've been consulted about whether the police should do a particular thing as a member of the local consultative group.
And when was that?
Oh, regularly over the last few years.
Okay. It just seems that a lot of people see things with their own eyes, and they can tell that police operate differently in different situations. We had the Black Lives Matter protest, for example, where police took the knee, you know, which some people couldn't believe. And then there was riots in those times when police officers were injured as a result, 27, 30, that kind of thing. And they were clearly being given instructions to operate differently than they were with other protests in London at the same time.
Police officers will deal with what's in front of them regardless of the nature of the people involved. If the people are peaceful and not seeking to challenge police conditions on a march or whatever, then the police will facilitate that protest. If, on the other hand, the protesters are challenging them, physically trying to push through lines or such like, then they will be resisted. And if that scales up into more focused violence from either side, then that's going to be what the police do. They're not going to just let them walk through lines where decisions have been made they're not to go.
Yeah. Well, we've seen with the Palestinian demonstrations at Hyde Park when they were told that they should not enter Hyde Park, and they all just marched into Hyde Park, and the police didn't stop them. So, you know, there would have been other situations where they would have tried harder.
I'm not familiar with that particular situation. You know, there can be occasions when the crowd is simply too big, or the hole in whatever sort of barrier there is, fence or whatever, is too big for the police to successfully close. But like I say, I'm not familiar with that particular instance.
All right. Well, thanks very much indeed. Peter Kirkham there talking about how there isn't two-tier policing in this country. A lot of people would disagree.